Now, no, maybe up here. Thanks. I'll show it real quick. Yeah. Oh, all right. Turn the sound back on. Yummy pork indeed. Oh, we still good? Nope. There we go. Yeah, I like it. Okay. Can I use the controller? I can. That's good to know. All right. Give me just a second. Actually, we all got a hoodie. I won a Roku last night. So that's nice. Oh, um, let's, if you've already played visual novels, then you might be familiar with these shortcuts, but just in case you aren't, uh, might want to use the keyboard and mouse. Who uses Roku anymore? Wait. I haven't got it all set up yet. What up, Wendy? Control tab, skip text, toggle skipping, fast forward. Autoplay. Yep, I know how visual novels work. On a forward time. Mm-hmm. H, middle mouse button, X gets rid of the text box. Escape, right mouse button opens the game menu. Quick menu button on the top left. Choose the menu point you'd like to access. Scroll with the mouse wheel or page up and down. V, toggle self-assistive self-voicing. Oh, right. Another thing that should be noted is that you can play through the doors in any order. Just click on whichever door you like, except for the right door, which isn't implemented yet, and off you go. Some audio events in this game also make use of stereo effects, thus it's best to enjoy the game with headphones. There isn't a Roku in my room, I swear. Yeah, there is. The rest should be pretty self-explanatory. Have fun playing Mycorrhiza. Yeah, I would just need to clear out some space and probably I could probably put it like back here. Just take that cat thing down away and that chair and just kind of maneuver stuff differently. All right, let's start with the left door. Freaky eyes cat. Act 1. Pets. My eyes were burning. It felt like hot coals were lying on my eyelids. I slowly opened them and attempted to heave myself up from the cold asphalt, but I failed. My whole body was heavy and my head felt like it was being squashed by a hydraulic press. After a few attempts, I finally succeeded and tried to make it out where I was. Tried to make out where I was. The fog in my mind lifted slowly and I realized that I was in a dark alleyway. My vision was still blurry and I had trouble keeping my eyes open, but I could tell that I had never seen this place before. Slowly my heart began to race. Was I abducted? Mugged? What had happened to me? I hastily checked my body, fortunately finding no wounds. Why was I feeling this weak then? Maybe I was drugged? As I tried to recall what might have happened to me, my eyes finally focused and I could see the house in front of me. In fact, it was the only house on the street with its lights on. The dirty yellow glow shone through every single visible window. I felt some relief knowing that the tenants were awake. Perhaps they could tell me where I was. I approached the front door. It took me some searching to find the doorbell through the overgrown ivy. A deep gong rang out from within the house when I pressed it. The sound, amplified by the cold wind cutting through my shirt, made me tense up. What an odd choice for a doorbell sound, I thought while rubbing my upper arms to warm myself. I waited. No one answered. My mind twisted in confusion. Why was no one coming? I rang the doorbell again. Then I tried knocking. No response. No one was coming. I didn't understand. Did they forget to turn off the lights and go on vacation? It's a lot of reading. Yeah, I figured. It's a visual novel. As a last resort, I tried turning the doorknob and it actually opened. This worried me. Did something happen to the family living here? Perhaps I should find a phone and call the police. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the street. My heart started to pound as my body tensed up. I wanted to dash into the house, but my feet refused to move. What was that sound? Was someone out there? Out here? Pictures of otherworldly monsters and armed kidnappers popped into my mind as my eyes scanned the darkness. The world was silent once more. I was still on edge, but my body slowly started to relax as I regained my composure. I decided I didn't want to find out what that was. Cautiously, I stepped through the threshold and firmly closed the door behind me. I felt an immediate lurch of guilt since I was trespassing into a stranger's home, but I'd rather face a police questioning than wander around a strange neighborhood in the middle of the night. Hello? Is anyone here? No answer. The house was eerily quiet. I cautiously ventured through further down the front hall. Perhaps I could find a telephone. I stopped in front of one of the doors. A dim yellow light seeped silently through the bottom crack. I turned the knob. Locked. Then the next one. Also locked. They all seem to be. We're in fucking Silent Hill, son of a bitch. I frowned. Why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? Yeah, why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? I don't know why that sentence didn't make any sense to me. It gave me an uneasy feeling. The door at the very end of the hall was the only one that I hadn't tried yet. I grasped its handle and turned it slowly. It swung open to complete darkness. Once again, my body tensed up while my mind started to conjure horrific images. A beast with dislocated limbs and crooked teeth creeping towards me from the darkness. A floor littered with corpses and walls stained with blood. A giant spider sitting in a corner, waiting for its chance to strike. My hands shook as I reached to flick on the light. It was an utterly ordinary bedroom. Son of a bitch. My heartbeat slowly calmed down as I realized that I seemed to be safe. I felt almost silly getting scared of nothing. Quick search yielded nothing but barren, dusty shelves. The bed was the only meaningful object present. Slowly but surely, a wave of fatigue washed over me. With my adrenaline rush fading away, I found that I was more exhausted than I had realized. like a worm worming its way into an apple. A single thought slowly evaded in my mind. I had to sleep. Trying to fight it made it worse, as if some outside power was affecting me. Sleeping in a stranger's bed in a stranger's home was the last thing I wanted to do right now, but it was soon the only thing I could think of as my consciousness faded. I had to sleep. The world turned dark and the soft covers of the bed pulled me deeper and deeper into the black abyss. Oh, Resident Evil. Whatever. Locked, jammed, same fucking thing. They're not opening. I shut awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. Save. Not safe. Save. I am a save point, apparently. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I couldn't remember it anymore, but it must have been horrifying. Chills were still running down my spine. It was just a dream. Just a nightmare. Nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind, but I was more confident that I'd be able to find help now that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to retry the doors just in case. They were still locked. I just wanted to go home and take a shower. I smelled my clothes and they indeed started to smell slightly sour. This place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd be better off out in the streets now that it was day, even if I was still missing my wallet. Oh, we have music. I left the house for the bright sunlight. The back street didn't seem so bad anymore. There were no boys around that started singing and dancing randomly. I found it to be rather cozy and quaint. I made my way down the path until I heard the faint sound of conversation in the distance. A weight lifted from my heart when I first glimpsed people walking around in a pedestrian area. There weren't too many of them, though, and as I looked around, I got the feeling that it was a rather small town. Locked doors have keys, jam doors have jelly. I mean, that does make sense. Oh, shit. Um, Whatever. Didn't matter. I could finally ask for help. Excuse me, could you tell me where I am? The woman blinked at my approach. She frowned and scowled in my general direction. This is Kejam Heath. Kejamite? Kejamite? I don't know how to pronounce that. She looked uncomfortable talking to me, so I thanked her and let her be. Kejamite. I had never heard of a town like that before. Where? How did I end up here? The thought of being somewhere I didn't recognize scared me. How was I supposed to get back home if I didn't have the slightest idea where to go? Oh shit, it will. Trees and flowers were planted at regular intervals, which gave it more of a rural atmosphere. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. My next best bet would be asking someone to allow me to make a call from their mobile phone. I approached an older man in a business suit. Excuse me, may I use your phone? I'm a bit lost and would like to call a friend of mine so he can pick me up. His lips curled into a grimacing frown. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a hurry. I approached person after person, but I had no luck. No one wanted to lend an unkempt, half-dressed stranger their phone. As I made my way through a side street, I overheard two elderly women. I heard of some violent incidents recently. Most got away with just a flesh wound, saying that they were attacked by someone or something. One of them was a black knight. Yeah, I heard that too. I wonder if it has anything to do with the pet disappearances. I heard of another cat that hadn't come back in several days. I was so focused on the conversation that I almost ran into a girl. I mumbled an apology until I realized that she had approached me on purpose. Hi. Hi. You need to call someone, right? She extended her hand and offered me her phone. How did you know? People have been talking about you. We've had some violent crimes here recently. Everyone is a little on edge. Many pets have been getting sick. Some say someone has been poisoning them. She nervously shuffled her feet and glanced away. Thank you. I won't take long. I took her phone. It was a red flip phone with a small panda hanging from a strap. The top bar read May's phone. Her background was set to a side view picture of herself in a pedestrian area that looked oddly familiar. It struck me as a bit odd that she was using a picture of herself, but who was I to judge? I brushed that thought aside and dialed a friend's number, but the call didn't go through. I tried it again, but the result was the same. Maybe his phone was turned off? There's no phone in her hand. Sus. That is very sus. Hang on. Go! Get! Go! Stupid fucking cat. Yeah, maybe it is because it's a demo. I tried my parents' house phone, then my job's front desk, and my boss's personal cell. Each time the call failed. I was sure that I had the right numbers. Maybe the phone had a bad connection? It seems like the calls won't connect for some reason. Maybe you'll have more luck trying a landline. My phone does act up sometimes. You might be right. Still, thank you a lot. Thank you a lot. I didn't want to hold her up any longer, so I gave her her phone back and wandered off with a rushed farewell. Leaving that way may have been a bit rude, but I was too frustrated to care. I just wanted to look for another way to get in contact with someone I knew. It occurred to me that I should have asked her for directions to the police station. I turned to look for her, but she had already vanished. As I made my way through town, I could now definitely feel the tension in the air. She was right. Everyone was on edge. While I was passing by an alleyway, something caught my eye. They were too they were too big to be rats. I couldn't really make anything out other than their eerie, glowing eyes. Maybe it was a cat gang searching the trash for food. A propus food. I was starving. But I couldn't possibly just ask random people to feed me, and since my wallet was missing, I didn't have any money on me to buy something. Though there were oddly tempting looking plants growing nearby. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. Their strange appearance hypnotized me, and without me noticing, my feet inched closer and closer and closer. Oh, we should totally eat them. I couldn't really think while hungry, and who knew how long it's been since I've eaten, so it was probably either this or starving. I dug in. They didn't even taste that bad. Kind of grassy, but edible. Apropos? Okay, that's how you spell that? I never knew how to spell that word. Well, I learned something new today. It's pronounced however I wanted to say it. Yeah, it's now apropos. Although it grew harder and harder to chew with every bite. Something red dripped onto the ground. I soon realized that a liquid was coming out of my mouth. I couldn't tell if it was blood or the plant's juices. More started to pour out, as I panicked and tried to figure out what was going on. While feeling around my mouth, I realized that I had become totally numb. Suddenly, a fleshy chunk fell into the red pool that had started to form before my feet. Was was that my tongue? My vision became blurry and my stiff body hit the cold ground. Damn, his tongue fell out. Visitors never late, Frodo Baggins. He arrives precisely when he means to. Exactly. My vision became blurry. Yeah, I read that already. It was dark when I woke up again. I could make out that I was still lying next to the plants. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. Motherfuckers. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed. I felt a sudden sting traveling from my head to my feet, and the pain grew by the second. Something was happening to me. Am I being eaten? Oh no, my hand. It was bending in weird ways. Not just my hand, my whole body was warping. But it seemed like it couldn't handle the transformation. Yeah, no shit. My body writhed. Oh, and snapped in two. That sounded yummy. Alright, try again. Let's not eat them. No, I said game. Uh, Jesus! It was actively trying to make me eat them. That's cool. I broke away from the hypnotic pool of the plants. What was I thinking? It didn't matter how hungry I was. They may be poisonous. But my hunger was beginning to gnaw at my insides. My vision grew blurry. Who knew how long it's been since I've eaten? Suddenly I collapsed and the world around me vanished. It was dark when I awoke. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. Motherfuckers. Wait, I did that joke already. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed from hunger. Something was shuffling by my ear. I felt the sniffing of an animal, perhaps one of those cats I saw earlier. I couldn't bring myself to look. I lost interest and walked past me toward the plants. I heard more follow. As they padded into view, I noticed that something was off about them. It must have been my mind playing tricks on me. My hunger was overwhelming. Fucking vegans. Something about their bodies was wrong. They started to eat the plants. Um, I don't think that's gonna go well. They were smacking rather loudly and made unnatural, fleshy sounds. Or maybe it will go well. Every now and then one would pause and give off a low growl that didn't at all sound like a cat, more like a slightly higher pitched bear growl. I don't like those sounds. Oh, thank you. After a while, the sounds diminished and I felt their presence vanish. I gathered my strength and forced myself to my feet. What had just happened? What were those creatures? The violent crimes that I had heard about earlier popped into my mind. My hands began to shake slightly. What would have happened if I hadn't been paralyzed and if they had noticed that I was still alive? Fucking hiccups. Most house lights were still lit. I mustn't have been out for long. Um, I think that was Discord. Yeah. Stupid Discord. Oh, no. You just cheered. 150. Feed me, Seymour. You're a good friend. Once again, my body gave off a deep growl. It was it was as if my stomach was eating itself. I had to get some food or else I was in danger of collapsing again. Being as desperate as I was, I approached the next best house and knocked. I was surprised when the door actually opened. Hi there, come on in. How nice of you to visit. Before me stood a fashionably dressed woman with a big smile on her face. Yeah, she's not creepy at all. Yeah, bro love is strong. At first glance, she seemed welcoming, but her movements were rather stiff and almost mechanical, as if they had been practiced over and over again. The hat, scarf, and bag around her shoulders suggested that she was just about to leave. Oh, the bag? Don't worry about it. I just think it suits me, so I've gotten used to wearing it around the house. She seems like she had noticed my confused look. It seemed unpractical to dress like this at home, but I guess she was very conscious about her appearance. Now come in. Everyone's already inside. Do we know each other? She took another, more thorough look at me and seemed to realize that we did, in fact, not know each other. Ah, you must be my new neighbor then. I'm Sabrina. Come in. She disappeared before I could correct her. I hesitantly followed her inside. On my way in, I saw a food bowl near the entrance with some of the strange looking plants in it. Huh? She'd been feeding those to her pet. I peeked after Sabrina into the living room. A man leapt to his feet and as he saw me and stretched his big hand out up to me. His coat suggested that he was active in a medical or scientific field, and that he had maybe gotten here right after work. His other arm hung down limply. Hi there, it's nice to meet you. I'm Frederick. How are you doing? I reciprocated his firm handshake, and he cheerfully gestured me to take a seat beside him. To my surprise, the girl who had helped me earlier was here as well. I believe her name was May. She gave me a small wave. It's starting to feel like a festivity. We should have neighborhood get togethers like these more often. Oh, right, this is. She turned and frowned in my direction while trying to remember a name she hadn't asked me for. Scott. I'm Scott. Right, Scott. He moved in nearby recently, I think, so I thought we should invite him in as well. Certainly, it is nice to see you. No, I'm not really. Oh, right, food. Give me a second. She rushed into the kitchen and came out with the steaming dishes of food. I could make out different kinds of meat, baked potatoes, and more. My stomach gave off a deep growl, and my mouth began to water. Any thought of honesty about my origin was gone. The other visitors started piling food onto their plates, and I followed suit. As I devoured it and life came back to my body, I let my eyes wander over the others. Everyone seemed to be rather tense, especially Sabrina and Frederick. Their movements were rather stiff. Every now and then they threw glances each other's way, glances that seemed to indicate mistrust. Sabrina seemed to especially be eyeing the cup that Frederick was drinking out of. Every now and then, when they noticed each other's looks, they'd put on a fake smile. May seemed like she hadn't planned to be here in the first place. Was she just dragged into it, just like I was? As I was cleaning my plate of its scraps, something important flashed into my mind. Excuse me, would you mind if I use your phone? Sabrina tisked. I'm afraid I don't have one. I never cared for those buggers. She looked over to Frederick. Maybe he can use yours. Of course. I can show you to my house once we're ready to go. He gave off a sigh of relief and thanked Frederick. He waved his hand in the air. No problem at all. Please excuse me for one moment, though. He shuffled out of the room, presumably toward the bathroom. All right, I'll make some more tea. She scooped up Frederick's cup and left me alone with May. I cleared my throat and nodded in her direction. Thank you again for lending me your phone. I did appreciate that. You're welcome. I hope you have more luck with the landline. Yeah, I hope so too. And I guess that was the end of the conversation. Perhaps she felt uncomfortable speaking to a weird smelling stranger. I'm going to go wash my dishes. And there she went. The other two were taking quite a while. I used the opportunity to let my eyes wander around the room. The walls were dressed with paintings of all kinds, pictures of nature, as well as more abstract drawings. A fancy looking framed piece of paper and a photograph that was standing on the drawer beneath them caught my eye. former seemed to be an art degree, and the latter a picture of Frederick and Sabrina when they were younger. They were standing somewhere that could be a university campus. That looks like the plant and some weird eyes. Not what you're describing on the screen, but I digress. Both had a genuine smile on their face. Seemed like their friendship went back quite a bit. Um, May? Hey. Whoa! Did she sneak behind me? I thought I had a clear view of the kitchen entrance. I think I heard some rumbling coming from downstairs. It'd probably be good if you check it out in case Sabrina hurt herself. Oh, well, she has been gone for quite a while. Maybe something did happen to her. Perhaps I should take a look. I felt May's eyes follow me to the basement. I squinted down the stairs. It was almost pitch black. I swallowed back my nerves and carefully crept down the steps. Maybe I should have called out to Sabrina, but something told me not to. I managed to reach the bottom stair and peeked around the corner. There I saw her kneeling by a lamplight in front of a large cage. A basket of the strange plant sat beside her. There, there. It's all right. Take a good sniff of the cup. We need to hurry, okay? I know that he's growing one too. Everyone is. Everyone wants to get rid of the competition. We need to hurry. She held Frederick's cup to the bars. Something in her voice disturbed me. Whatever was going on, I wanted no part of it. I returned to the living room as quietly as I could. There you are, all ready to go. Upon hearing Frederick's loud voice, I jumped. What I had seen in the basement made me a bit anxious. She's creepy. Hmm. Horrible to hear about Keeper's mom. Hope she does. Hope she gets better. Took a quick look around and saw that May was already gone. Sure, I'm ready. Leaving already? I just made some more tea. I turned to see Sabrina standing in the living room entrance with a put on smile. Ah, sorry, dear. I'm just not young enough to stay out late like we used to. She put on a playful pout. Oh, you do wound me. Come by again. You know you're welcome any time. We bid our farewells and set out into the cold night. I was glad to leave. What I had seen was still nagging on my mind. Frederick might be in danger. I had to tell him. I, I hesitated. How was I supposed to tell him when I, myself, wasn't sure what I had seen? I collected myself and went for it. To my surprise, he wasn't nearly as upset at Sabrina as I thought he would be. He actually seemed to be more upset at me. I think you should not have snooped around in someone's house who invited you over. I was left perplexed. What just happened? I thought I was warning him, but instead I've been scolded like a child. His face relaxed and he gave me his usual smile. It seemed slightly pained this time. I suppose there's been no harm done. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. I couldn't blame him. I noticed more and more vacant houses as we crept through the town. Some were boarded up. Doors had been left wide open. Why are there so many empty houses here? These houses have been vacant for a while now. You need not worry. I was sure that I passed by here earlier, but I didn't notice any abandoned buildings back then. They couldn't have left so suddenly in just half a day, could they? An uneasy feeling started to fester inside of me. Here we are. We stopped before a house that looked much like every other house in this town. He stepped inside. I hesitated at the entrance before trailing behind him. Come on in. No need to be shy. Do you want something to drink? No, thanks. Frederick hesitantly grunted and led me down the hallway. I only wanted to use the phone and get out. All the weirdness of the day had me on edge. But what if I still couldn't reach anyone? Where would I go? I was balancing a fine line between hope and despair, and the phone call would probably be what would topple me in either direction. All right, here you are. The phone had a cord attached to the receiver. It seemed rather old-fashioned, but at least it had buttons instead of a rotary dial. I picked up the receiver and tried a number. Am I doing something wrong? There's no dial tone. Oh, let me see. He took the receiver from my hand and pressed a few buttons. He let out a disappointed sigh. Not again. Those damn rodents keep getting to my cables. I'll go and take a look at it. Feel free to make yourself at home. Ah, in case you get thirsty. He fetched a small bottle of soda from the kitchen, gave it to me, and went into the basement. It seemed like I wouldn't be able to leave quite so soon. Once I held a drink in my hand, I did start to get thirsty. I took a sip and thought about what to do next. Yeah, I'm getting some serious creepy ass vibes from this, that's for sure. Take a look around. Uh Pictures. Um I took a look at the pictures hanging in the hall. There weren't too many, but he seemed to be pretty cheerful in all of them. Especially the ones with his dog. For some reason I hadn't seen it around. Nothing else caught my eye. There's only one room over. Surely you wouldn't mind. Said I should feel at home after all. The living room was minimalistic and unimpressive. A TV stood in the corner, gathering dust. His bookshelf was well maintained, on the other hand. I looked over the books. He seemed pretty interested in biology. Maybe he was a teacher or even a researcher, just like myself. I'd love to chat with him about his field sometime once I get out of this mess. I chose a random book without a cover and opened it. It seemed to be a handwritten notebook. I quickly shut it to recheck the title. It seemed like I had pulled out a fantasy book instead of a biology text. Evolutionary Development, intersections between botany and zoology. That would be a rather weird name for a fantasy novel, but the depictions on the pages confirmed it being fiction. The pages showed drawings of creatures I'd never seen before, accompanied by detailed graphs and diagrams. I guess this could be one of those fake science art pieces, like what the Voynich manuscript is theorized to be. Yeah, something like that. I returned the book and went back out into the hall. Alright, it's all done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing you didn't catch me snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. Yeah, I'm sure I gotta go to the basement. Took the bottle I had drunk from earlier and left through the hallway. Had an odd sense of deja vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same that I had already tried on May's mobile phone. Once again, they failed to connect. How could that be? I was 100% certain that they were correct. I tried all the numbers of friends, family, and even work colleagues I could think of until finally. Yes, hello? It was a woman's voice that I didn't recognize. I was certain that I had dialed the number of one of my work colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who that is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again. She hung up. Alright, something was definitely wrong here. Might be best to talk to Frederick and see if he could help me somehow. Maybe he had a clue as to how I could get back home. I crept down the hall. He went this way, right? I began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran down my back. The sound was coming from the basement. The old floorboards squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of a weak light coming from down the steps. I took them as gently as I could as I held a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom and turned the corner. It was just like before. Frederick knelt over before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, yes, you have the scent now, don't you? We must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. He will find the secret much faster than the others. No, no, no. We can't have him make something like you, too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped out from underneath me as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. The sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. Oh, sweet Jesus. There's the dog. Frederick was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. He was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. Yeah, he's got my DNA now. It had features of a human, but I could almost also see some elements that were distinctly dog-like. Its mouth was way too big, and the inside of it was filled with seemingly randomly set teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, were the enormous eyes staring right back at me. Frederick fumbled with the lock on the cage. My feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All the while, one thought was frantically running through my head. I had to get out. I had to get out from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realized that I had exited town already and was now on a big grassy plain. Breathing heavily and with fear flooding my mind, I had almost not noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet and my vision slowly darkened from exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back and see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, but it seemed like Frederick wanted to send it after me to kill me. Realizing that I was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't be real. There was no way to explain what I had seen, and every inch of my body repulsed for the idea of such a monster existing. Edward. Yes. It definitely reminds, like, he's done combined a human with a dog, and it's starting to remind me of fucking Full Metal Alchemist. And it does have a mouth like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, which I can't wait for season 4. And I need to get Netflix again so I can watch Witcher season 2. But I had seen it with my own two eyes. I continued on at a slower pace this time and soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. Suddenly, my feet staggered. A wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I had stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. Throbbing pain pulsed through my back. It was as if something had stabbed me. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The monster? Frederick? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Is that it? That's it. Holy shit. Usually you'd be sent straight to the title screen, but since the goal of this demo is to gather some valuable feedback, I hope you won't mind if I bother you real quick. You can fill out a survey over here. I'm not interested. I might do that later. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just getting into it. I can't wait for this to come out. A guide to funny faces, huh? Hi again. I have no idea what's going on. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I was chased by some kind of animal or monster, and there was some eerie plant. I had forgotten most of the dream, but I knew that it must have been terrifying. The pulsing pain in my head slowly subsided. I took deep breaths and kept mumbling to myself that it all had been a dream. It had all been a dream, but nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. Okay, so both of these take place. Both of these take place at the same place? I'm confused. What the fuck is going on? We'll find out. I'm gonna run an ad. I know you're all subscribed, but it I think it helps me if I run ads. So 30 seconds. Could have really just been a nightmare, yeah. Yeah, it's never that simple. I'm not going to sing that. But yes, words to live by if you live in a horror game. Look out of the window confirmed that it was still night. I must have either slept for a whole day or only for a few hours. Considering how tired I was, it must have been the latter. I left the bedroom to retry the doors just in case. Are we just like doing this all over again? Like, we've all done this. All I needed to do was find a police station. They'd definitely be able to help me out. So I wandered around and grew more and more aware of how big this town was. The buildings were pretty high and nature was rather scarce. But it was strange how empty the streets were considering how many people must be living in this town. My ears began to pick up the subtle sounds of laughter. Sounds turned unease in my empty stomach. It was awfully late for such a public crowd. There wasn't cheering or rounds of applause, just laughter. Loud and obnoxious laughter that didn't seem to pause for breath or subside or grow. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, that was pretty good. It became louder as I approached the town center, becoming a wave of commotion by what sounded to be a massive crowd. They just laughed and kept laughing. It sounded dreadful. I was tempted to change course and avoid the town center. Yet this direction was my best bet for finding an inn or a police station. These priorities outweighed my sense of danger. I pressed on. The laughter was bellowing with hundreds of voices until finally I could glimpse the source of the commotion. The crowd gathered around a performer who was doing something to make them laugh. I strained to see the action, peeking through the small gaps in the people while keeping a safe distance. The group was just too dense. I couldn't see any details. Curiosity overwhelmed me, and I started pushing through the people. They seemed to melt away without paying me much attention. Oh, shit. I hit the wrong button. As I approached, I passed a table with books. Couldn't make out their title, but I could see something that resembled two masks on the cover. Paying it no mind, I pressed onward. I couldn't understand what was happening. The performer wasn't making any sounds. I couldn't make out any movement from beyond the crowd either. What was so entertaining? What I saw was the opposite of funny. It was horrifying. Jesus Christ! What's wrong with his head? I agree with this text box. He turned his hips so that everyone in the crowd could have a clear view, as if he didn't want anyone to miss it. Why are people laughing at this? A bystander heard me. I don't know, his face just seems so funny. I mean, look at it. I stared at him in disbelief. He and the others really did seem to find this funny. Were they seeing something I wasn't? No matter how I looked at it, it didn't seem like anything other than disturbing. Yeah, not Brooke. I averted my gaze and walked away. I wanted nothing to do with this madness. While continuing to comb through the town center while trying to keep my distance from the crowd, I noticed that the sun had already started to rise. And I still hadn't found anything that even vaguely resembled a police station. It's kind of creepy, isn't it? I'd walked by a girl that was standing nearby. She was watching the crowd from a distance. Yeah, it is. I was glad to hear that someone else was thinking the same thing. An awkward pause followed. I was under the impression that she had wanted to start up a conversation, but I guess that wasn't the case. My stomach broke the silence. Are you hungry? Blood shot to my face. It was true that I was feeling starved. Swallowing my pride, I nodded. I have a sandwich with me. You can have it. Are you sure? No worries. I'm not hungry anyways. Well, I was embarrassed to accept her generosity. I was not embarrassed enough to refuse. I had to hold myself back as to not lunge onto it, but I kept my cool and ate it cautiously as to not embarrass myself. Some of my strength returned to me. In the meanwhile, I decided to ask her about this town. Sorry, I don't really know my way around here that well. Oh, you're not from here? No, not really. Maybe I could help you look. I'm feeling a bit uneasy being alone here anyways. I glanced back in the direction of the laughing crowd. Sure, I would really appreciate that. I'm Scott, by the way. I'm Meg. Nice to meet you. We set off to look for help. The idea to call someone I knew from May's phone came up, but she didn't have it on her, unfortunately. We approached several people to ask them for directions or to lend their phones, but all of them seemed to ignore us. I tried to make some small talk with May every now and then, but her replies were always short and didn't leave much room for follow-ups. But she perked up when I asked her about her family. I have a sister. At first I thought that'd be all I'd get out of her, but she continued after a short pause. She's been home more recently. Usually she'd leave early and return late, or not return home at all for several days. Her job's really important, so it's understandable. But I was really happy when she told me that she wouldn't go to work for a while. I assumed she was finally able to request some time off. But she continued to work even at home. She's doing it to help people, and I'm proud of her, but I still wish we could hang out more. May hung her head. It seemed like I had touched on a sensitive topic. I thought of ways to console her or cheer her up, but couldn't come up with anything to say. Since I didn't have any siblings, it was hard to relate, but it seemed like she really loved her sister. I could ironically relate more to May's sister. Just as her, I too have barely been home due to my work. And just like her, I'd likely still continue working even if I was home. But as opposed to May's sister, I didn't have anyone waiting for me back home. I decided against poking any further, and instead shifted my focus back to asking people for directions, without much luck. Oddly enough, it was as if they were all going in the same direction. The town center. Do you think they're going to see that performer? Silence. Maybe she just hadn't heard me. Turned around to ask her again, but she was nowhere to be seen. Just as I had finished that thought, I felt a presence behind me. I slowly turned around. Ah, son of a bitch! What the hell? What do you think? Do I look funny? What? No! Get away from me! I took a few steps back, almost afraid the man would lunge at me. But he didn't. He just stood there with his distorted face. Yep, she's sus, and she disappeared. I see. Maybe I didn't do it quite right. And with that, he walked off, almost disappointed. Took a book out of his pocket and started flipping through it. For some weird reason, he seemed familiar. Was that the man in the laughing crowd that I had talked to earlier? This town was giving me the creeps. I needed to get out of here as fast as I could. But as I turned around, I saw that most of the people walking by had distorted their faces in one way or another. It was as if a virus had spread while we were looking for help. Without a second thought, I hurried off. I tried to not look anyone in the eye. But wherever I went, those people were everywhere. On top of that, the town seemed to have no end, as I couldn't find a road that led out, no matter how long I searched. Just as I was wondering about what to do, I recognized someone standing by the side of the road. There you are. You had me worried. Oh, I'm sorry. I had something to take care of. That sounded oddly vague. But I didn't want to be rude, so I dropped it. She did give me a sandwich after all. An invisible sandwich. And for some reason, the music is very distorted. What the fuck is going on? Did you have any luck finding your way back home? No, still nothing. And on top of that, there are all of these weird people walking around. Actually, I know someone who may be able to help. You do? Yes, they don't live far from here. How about I introduce you? And no worries, they don't own a dog. Oh, yeah, sure. Wasn't she new in this town? Maybe she met them while we were separated. And why did she bring up dogs? It's not like I ever told her whether I do or don't mind dogs. Perhaps I said something during my small talk attempts that made her think that way. I considered questioning her, but this was the only lead I had found so far, and I didn't want to lose this chance. We arrived at an old, tall building. I watched May from the corner of my eye. Something seemed different about her. I couldn't quite place the reason why. Perhaps it was just my imagination. They live here, on the highest floor. The building is pretty old and not many people live there anymore, so it's a bit run down. I'd appreciate it if you went first. I didn't protest and let us into the structure. The building was quite desolate, just as she had said. This place made me feel uneasy. I didn't want to stay here any longer than I had to. Not only was I afraid that everything would come down on our heads every minute now, I could only imagine what could lurk in these abandoned halls. I couldn't blame her for wanting me to go first. After climbing a set of stairs, May spoke up again. It should be the door at the end of the hall. I saw the door she was referring to. It was probably the only door in the entire building that wasn't damaged. The clean coat of paint was an eerie contrast in the ravished environment. And the one living there can help me out? No reply. I turned around and saw nothing. May was gone. Again. She could have at least said goodbye. Walked up to the door to knock, but it was already open. Maybe we had the wrong door after all. Yet May had seemed certain. What should I do? What should I do? Should I go inside? Perhaps I forgot to lock the door. Or May could have already notified them that we were coming, and they left the door open for us. I gave the door a soft push. Hello? No reply. It was a very small apartment. The door opened to the living room, which seemed to double as the bedroom. A single corridor led to two more rooms, probably the bathroom and kitchen. Just like the door itself, everything looked way too clean and tidy compared to the hallway outside. I didn't feel like breaking into a stranger's home, but they did leave the door open. Maybe they wanted me to wait inside. I stepped through the door and peered through a window, hoping to spot this person that I was supposed to meet. The town looked normal from up here, but I knew that wasn't the case. Something was wrong with this place, and I was trapped here. Would I ever be able to return home? I had people who relied on me. My team at the lab managed without me. The only reason why I took on that project was so I could help them, and now I tore myself away from the window. Wasn't the time to think about that. What I should be concentrating on right now was finding a way out. I thought about what to do next. Let's take a look around. Took a look at the pictures hanging on the walls. Most of them were paintings that depicted nature, only a few of them were photographs. One with a note scribbled onto it caught my eye. It depicted a man and a woman having a picnic. The note said Sabrina and Frederick, BFF. Seemed like one of them was living here, or maybe both. Son of a bitch. At the very least, I will now be able to recognize the tenant once I see them. The surface of the desk was crammed with beauty products, a single mirror standing amongst them. A small book was buried beneath the clutter. My own reflection peered back at me. I looked like I had aged a decade. The missing sleep was really bringing me down, not to mention all these strange occurrences today. If I ever get out of this, I'll need a long vacation, I thought. I moved the small bottles aside and picked up the book underneath. The cover depicted two masks with distorted facial expressions, and the title read, The Art of Humor. I flipped through it. It was apparently a guide by the most hilarious one that explained how to make funny faces. The pictures in the book were more disturbing than humorous. One description of a technique caught my eye. The following can be risky, but if you're willing, you're destined to become a humor virtuoso. It requires the opposite of removing. You need to add. Yeah, YOLO indeed. You search for those that are a disgrace to humor and take from them. I glanced at the pictures beside the text and shook my head in disgust. I started skimming through it quickly, and sure enough, it was full of similar depictions. On the very last page, I came to a sudden stop. There was a key taped to it. Did the key come with the book? Or did the owner of it hide it here? Oh well, it didn't matter to me anyway, since I didn't know what door the key was for. Suddenly, I heard a sound outside the apartment. There was no time to place the book back under the bottle, so I stuffed it into my pocket. Hastily slipped inside a closet and carefully pulled it shut. Wasn't sure why I was hiding, but I had an awful feeling in my guts. Finding a stranger standing in her apartment probably wouldn't be something someone would take in stride. Then again, finding one in your closet would be even worse. I watched through slits in the door as they entered the apartment through the half closed door. They stopped in the entryway and took a look around the room. Was this the tenant of the apartment? Shadows were obscuring part of her body. Their body. I strained my eyes trying to see what they looked like, but what I saw made me cover my mouth to suppress a gasp. The fuck? The woman's face was ravaged. Fleshy chunks clung to her forehead. Were those face parts? Tisk tisk. Forgot to close the door again. She spoke to herself and moved as if nothing was wrong, but her face was horrendous. She walked up to the mirror. This looks so much better, just like in the book. I should check the text again. I may have missed something. Oh no. I could feel the weight of the book in my pocket. I was sure I put it here. She rummaged the desk. What? What? Where is it? I know it was here. It was here. She cast the bottles from the desk to the ground. They shattered, spilling their sickly sweet smelling contents across the carpet. The panic drained from her face. It's okay. It's okay. I just need to buy a new one. It's completely fine. I'll just ask the most hilarious one if he has one left over. He has to. She scurried out of the apartment, leaving the door wide open. I remained frozen in the closet for a few more minutes. My heart slowly calmed itself. Once I was sure that she was really gone, I left the closet. I needed to get myself as far away from this building and hopefully this town as fast as I possibly could. As I was about to step out of the apartment, a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I had stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm as if something had stabbed me. This is what happened earlier. Found key 2? Hmm. Yeah, it could be some metaphor for just the end of the demo, or it could be something else in the story. So yeah, thoughts. That was fucking horrifying. The faces that was fucked up. That first one was very interesting. I really want to see what's going on with that because I liked how the that plant affected things. And was that dog just a dog, or was it combined I, with something else? Is this the animus? Something like that. But yeah, music was very interesting. I liked the 3D sound, or the dynamic sound, anyways, and it made for a very interesting experience. The animals were definitely eating the plants, yeah. But what were they? Were they had already been affected by it? Cats that had already been mutated, and when we ate it, that didn't go well. I've always found visual novels to be interesting. I like good ones, but they're usually pretty few and far between. All in all, can't wait for more of that. And to see what the third one is, if they're all connected like this in like a certain way, like all different stories about the same people, this anthology type of thing. And if there's another way that they're connected. All right, let's get Tomb Raider set up. I will be right back.